Thank you. It is Wednesday, February 1st, of 2023. We have been in a work session that was extensive, and we are going to move now into council time, after which we will have a couple of executive sessions. So we begin council
Excuse me,
time.
I'm sorry, Chair Bowerman, this is Leslie Lopez. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did want to ask to amend the agenda regarding the executive sessions. It would be to
And your
remove,
amendment is?
the amendment would be to remove the 10-minute pending litigation.
To remove
then-
it?
Yes, please. And then for the 15-minute executive session, that is actually potential litigation instead of pending litigation. But we would keep that on.
So we'll have a total of 15 minutes of executive session. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay,
And no
very good.
after action. Thanks.
There, I assume, are no objections to those amendments. And with that, we thank you, Leslie, and let's begin then with public comment. The public comment on during council time is on the council time agenda only. Is there anyone, staff, that you see who wishes to comment today?
I do have one person online so far. Caller, please state your name and then go ahead with your comment.
This is Kimberly Elbin, live citizen of Clark County. Well, as I navigate through all of this, I'm listening and writing notes. A gentleman mentioned possibly the word severability. I've been on that for a while because it sounded like he said even if the Constitution isn't followed, the policy will still apply. I really don't get that. I'm on the job training here, but I want to bring that up to the citizens that we're about to wake up. As far as the Red Cross, this is an example of a great service that has turned actually bad and evil. I would never trust any blood out of there at all because, of course, we think the jab is a bioweapon and have been coerced to have people take that. So, so in my opinion, you guys are starting to slowly get us into a socialist state, and you're following felon Governor Inslee and the criminal traitor Biden. You're following those agendas, and to the city and the council managers do have agendas that do not protect the citizens of the Constitution as citizens trust you to follow. I took an oath at age 18 to protect America and her people from foreign and domestic enemies, and I've been on record stating that the Vancouver City Council, or at least our members, are domestic enemies, as they have been not transparent to the citizens about their 15-year membership to the ICLEI, which is a United Nations entity. It has a twofold agenda to have a one world government, which is happening now in our local governments, and that's what I need people to wake up to, and to depopulate. I find that very inhumane. So they, following the Build Back Better, the WHO, the American Rescue Plan, all of that, people are going to start to see that if we follow that and don't follow God and our Constitution, you're weakening America and the very foundation of a free nation under God. I'm proposing citizens to make America godly again as I follow him according to his purpose. He has my first oath to be faithful and continue the path set forth for me. I fear not, and in his mysterious ways, I'm hoping a door will be open to wake Clark County citizens up to the pandemic nightmare of the two agenda that I mentioned, the one world takeover and having no more freedoms. And frankly, the House Bill 1333 will put me in prison and list me as a domestic enemy. I resent that very much. Citizens must be in person at the city and council meetings and at the Board of Health meetings. You must wake up. Do your studies as I have, and I beg and pray that you wake up. Do not take any more COVID shots, especially to your children. Eric Holmes is the Vancouver
That is the
City
end
manager.
of your time. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Chair, we do not have anybody else wishing to speak.
Thank you. So old business, is there a motion for approval of the minutes of
Motion to approve the
January
minutes,
25?
Madam Chair.
And a second?
Second.
Any objections, edits, suggestions for improvement, anything? And hearing none, they stand approved as drafted. Thank you. New business. We look to the request for the proclamation on Red Cross Month. Kathleen, who is going to introduce this?
Yes, I can do it briefly, Chair. So this, I believe, was actually sent to all the counselors from the Red Cross. It has been updated by staff just to make it more applicable to Clark County. So they are asking to have this proclamation for the March 2023, and it would be on the February 21st council meeting, but declaring March 2023.
Council, do you have any comments or any objections to that being done, perhaps?
I support it without any change in the proclamation.
As do I, Counselor. Is there a third? And we do
I'll
have
support
3.
that, for sure.
Thank you. Great. We have 4. Thank you very much. And then let's move to the request for proclamation of Black History Month. And I don't know again which staff member is presenting this.
Yes, and I can introduce this as well. I believe Councilor Mevaji brought this up at a previous council meeting. Our staff, I believe, did send the prior year's proclamation to the NAACP, and then they forwarded back their recommendation for the Black History Month, and this would be on a meeting in February of 2023.
I have heard from at least one counselor that there would be a request for re-examining the verbiage of this and working more closely, perhaps with the NAACP and perhaps with each other on the council to make it a little bit less combative language, perhaps, and more uplifting for the Black community.
I'm sorry.
Any comments?
Madam Chair. Yeah,
Yes.
and we're right in February, so this would be the time that we really need to finalize it. I did some quick research kind of across the nation on other proclamations, and obviously this one came from our local NAACP, and every year there's a theme and it changes every year. And I fully support having a proclamation by the Clark County Council. So in my survey of other statements, other proclamations, if you will, by other entities, and I looked at the White Houses to start with, as well as other entities, you know, they kind of write their own. This one does have typos in it, and there are some aspects of it that I would, you use the word combative, I probably would too, and divisive. And I think that's not the purpose of our proclamations. We need to have uplifting and supportive and non-controversial proclamations that we put our signature to. So I really want to do this quickly and have a proclamation that we could all agree to. But we first and foremost need to get rid of some of the typos. And so I know, Lindsay, you've worked on them in the past, and I know you're on the way out to bigger and better things. I'm hoping that we could all send some suggestions to Lindsay and have her quickly do a redraft so we can have this finalized in a timely way.
Would that be okay, Lindsay, as far as your timeline?
Sure, that's fine with me. The only challenge will be, as always with this, if there's conflicting recommendations that I receive from counselors, then it would need to come back to council time, but I'm happy to do this before I leave on Friday.
Sure. Good. Thank you. And Friday is the day, huh?
Chair,
It does go quickly. Counselor? Yes.
Thank you. I would be supportive of this as written with the caveat that correcting any typos that are there. I think it's important to support what the local NAACP has drafted. So I think I would be supportive of it.
Other comments from council?
I would lean towards supporting as well, but I do feel like it's important for us to hear a fellow counselor's concerns with it. So I agree. I want to keep this timely moving forward, but I would be interested in hearing in that discussion.
So you will hear from probably 2 or 3 of the counselors in that event, Lindsay, and thank you for your work on that before Friday. Is there anything to add, Kathleen?
Yes, so just for process wise, I would recommend, since there is differing opinions on council, to have Lindsay draft based on the information that she receives and then put it on next Wednesday's council time for final review, which would mean this would go to the 21st meeting for the February Black History Month proclamation.
Last year, we worked closely with Jasmine from the NAACP on this. Is she still involved in their organization?
So, Madam Chair, I did send an email, excuse me, to her initially, hoping to get their input and suggestion for a proclamation. They have a new president, Yolanda Frazier. I don't know if Jasmine is still engaged. I'm certain she probably is. So we had sent prior proclamations that we have done to her and then the NAACP as part of the process. This is what we got back, what we see today.
Yep. Very good. Well, thank you for that update. And is there anything else, Kathleen, or anyone else? Okay. Counselor reports.
Sure, I've got a few reports.
All right. Please go right ahead, Counselor Young.
This past week, I attended the Impact Committee, and not much to report there. Nothing that affected Clark County. There was an interesting discussion about the impact on tolling for I-205 and I-5, and one of the concerns that were brought up were that no alternatives were being provided. So an area was being impacted by the tolls, but there was no further investment in public transportation and such. I thought that was an interesting discussion. I did have something that I wanted to bring up, and this kind of goes along with the updates and policy that we've been discussing, and I wanted to see if council might have interest in a couple minor changes. One, and I don't know if maybe Kathleen can provide feedback, but I'm just kind of looking at our overall processes. And for example, this morning we had workshops and then we had council time. And I'm just wondering, because we have the opportunity for public comment during council time, whether it might make sense to reverse those times, just so that somebody can, if they do have public comments that they want to make, they don't have to sit around forever and, not knowing when the workshops are going to end, things like that, so that it might make it easier for them to be involved. That was the first thing.
Chair, I would just support that, having been one of those people that sat in the audience for a long time.
We did this according to the rules that we encountered, and so we need to take a look back at them and see what structure is provided that we need to live with on that, and we can certainly do that. You said there was another item?
Yes. Actually, there's two more, and I apologize. One of the things that occurred to me kind of during the past few discussions we've had, public input to me is an important thing, and I want to make sure that we get it right. And I want to suggest something for consideration, not having heard from staff or other council members. I don't want to recommend it to move forward without input, but one of the things that we witnessed during the last public hearing that we had a lot of people come is we witnessed a chain of people reading from the same document. And so one of the thoughts that I had was kind of looking at this, an idea of providing maybe a longer comment period for groups that have formed so that they could have somebody deliver that message instead of it being multiple pages. Because my guess would be that those individuals that read from that letter probably would not have otherwise testified. So I don't know if it would increase time. And then, but it also brings up the issue of what do we consider a group and who is considered for that. So I just was hoping that we might think about that and consider that as a possible option. And the last thing, again, all of this has to do with public input and involvement, is one of the things that I would support doing, and again, I'm always willing to hear if it's too large of a burden, what it means for staff and such, but when we have slide presentations prepared, and especially when we have staff reports prepared, I would love to see a section that specifically addresses who will be impacted by this particular item that we're working on, and have to also be informed of how those individuals that were impacted may have received communication from the county. Just a way that we don't miss people, some sort of a checklist for staff to go through to see, is this group affected? Are these people, are these individuals affected? And if they are, how can we get them involved in the conversation?
Kathleen, do you care to comment on that as to the extent that it exists now?
Yeah, so I was just pulling up a staff report. So our current staff reports have different sections identified now. One is the background, one is council policy implications, administrative policy implications, and then also community outreach. And then budget details attached to that as well. So there is a community outreach portion.
Does that specifically define who we have reached out to?
It might reference how it happens. So I'm looking at like the PROS plan. It says community outreach was achieved with the 2022 PROS plan, which identified the desire for water-based recreation as noted above. So that was just one of the ones I was looking at. So it does say, I think it identifies what they've done and why they're doing it. And a lot of that is required by RCW for a public participation plan. And then some of it is impactful. And then there's some areas that's going to be impactful countywide as well.
I think this kind of comes on for me as a response to the question that I had asked last week during the vacation item that we were discussing. And I will agree that it's very unlikely that the city of Woodland and Cowlitz County were affected by that, but I still think as a process of good measure, we should be reaching out and informing all entities that could potentially be impacted. And I just don't want those things to get missed, because when those things are missed, that's when we have uproars, that's when we have people that are very upset, and that's what also leads to a general distrust in the process.
I think we can be intentional in looking at it. And of course, the council wants it more clearly defined, because as I'm just doing a spot check just to remind myself. So I'm like looking at another one from Public Works about the Columbia Land Trust. And it talked about performing outreach and education services. And it says Clark County will publicize information through the county website, social media outlets, and flyer distribution at events. But maybe there's some I'm open to suggestions. So if council, wants to help or direct that we do things a little bit more concisely, or we can review them as we move forward, we're always open to suggestions and ensuring that, the community is being represented or being heard and have that opportunity, and that we're reflecting that appropriately as well.
Anything further, Counselor?
Well, I just want to tap on that. I mean, obviously, this is an ongoing process, and this is a discussion point we've had ever since I've been a council member, everything from answering constituent emails and providing information to reforming our webpage to make things searchable and discoverable to the public. And, reversing order on how we present things so people don't have to wait around. How do we deal with specific topics of controversy or pop-up targets that we don't even know about until the rooms are filled, on how we manage public comment. All of that we need to constantly have an eye towards improving. And I think we're making some progress. When we're having a development, do we notify only people within 500 feet of it? We just saw how that morphs over time, especially with the 179th, when there was so much public outreach. And then when it actually starts moving forward and funding starts to come in, then everyone's moved, new people have come in, and then everyone who's right there that should have been part of the process and may have been by our old rules, suddenly say, I don't know anything about this. What are you doing, county? It was in the paper every day, and we did open houses, and so all I'm saying is I think we're doing our best to keep an eye on this issue, but obviously we need to constantly look to improve it, even with our own adjacent city councilors and city managers, administrators. Information flow is so important to what we do. So I'm in favor of some of what was brought up. I don't know about providing more time, other than we just discussed this in our rules of procedure. It's kind of on when we know about a topic and can allocate specific time to a group, which we have done before, and opposing groups, which we have done before. But we can't have every public meeting where we need to conduct business as just an open forum. It's just not a platform for the public to come in and express their views on world dominion and the UN and other topics. We have to conduct business. So I think we've just discussed some of these topics recently. I don't think we need to adjust those procedural rules we just adopted, but obviously we should keep an open eye to make things more efficient. And I would agree with what was just mentioned about reversing the public comment from the time of our work sessions. I don't know how that works with organizing staff and having them available to do their presentations, but
yeah,
that's my comments.
And if I could just add briefly, the rules of procedure, so they have the newest draft that council's been working on has not been adopted yet. There's some still outstanding items that legal is reviewing. So that will come back to you for discussion, hopefully in the near future at a council time. It does reflect the council's direction at that point, which was they couldn't, the 3 minutes, somebody couldn't waive their 3 minutes and give it to another constituent, but it also provides flexibility for council to address if there is a lot of people. Just for a history perspective as well on the council time and work sessions. So prior to COVID, actually work sessions were at 9 in the morning and council time was at 1 in the afternoon. And then with COVID, we were very limited in what we could discuss. And it was council's desire to consolidate that in the morning to get that information done. And there's always, it benefits and it hurts regardless on which way you go. So whether it's staff sitting around waiting to present, outside attorneys waiting, outside customers for council time, or, the public providing testimony. So I think we're open to whatever council would like to do, but I did want to share the 1 o'clock and the 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning difference that before COVID, we actually had them split. And I'm not sure if council wants to do that again, but we can certainly do council time first prior to a work session. We just have to provide the appropriate notice on that.
Okay, thanks. And we'll be picking this up on the agenda soon. So more about this in detail will be coming soon. Councilor Medvigi, you were speaking just a moment ago. I wanted to ask you if the Children's Justice Committee had met on the 26th as scheduled.
Yes. And I was going to have a very brief comment about that to highlight what we discussed, or at least the highlights of that discussion. Yeah. And I also want to just highlight one thing Kathleen just said. No matter what change we have made, we always get negative comment about having made that change. So we have to be very careful with future changes. So the Children's Justice Center, the two main takeaways for me at that meeting. One, the work that's been ongoing and I think is in a good direction now with the facility management. That was very warmly received, the work of our county on basically the future plan, as I understand it, is a new building will be built and rented, leased, and it'll be the most cost-efficient mechanism to move forward for a new facility for the Children's Justice Center. I don't know about the family court and where that sits, whether they're tagging along as part of that or what's going to happen with the court. So that was a good milestone because we've come back and forth, and their future location was very much up in the air. And for the public's benefit, one of the real tremendous shortfalls that we're experiencing, not only there's a growing caseload. The pandemic caseloads fell, which we were afraid of. All of our first reporters, our mandatory reporters, were not having contact with our children with the school closures, and that whole system was disrupted, and it came to fruition. Cases weren't reported, cases weren't filed, but now they are. Cases are blossoming, which puts a strain on the system. We don't have enough volunteers as victim advocates. We don't have enough trained victim advocates. We don't have a steady financial stream to support the training and of those victim advocates. So everyone's adjusting, but there is a new caseload out there that's blossoming, and it's putting strains on the system. So we're going to have some future discussions about funding in that area.
Very good.
And Chair,
yes,
just really quick on the office space, and so yes, that is the recommendation. I'll say it's a recommendation for CJC and for the family law annex to go to a new building, but it will come back to council for final consideration, because we did do a cost analysis of building and leasing versus remodeling our current building for that. And there is some definite cost differences, but what Michelle has done with facilities is go back to CJC and the courts to see what makes sense and what do you prefer. And it sounds like we're getting a consistent support of a new building, but that will come back to council. So while it's a recommendation right now, we'll hopefully get the direction from council very soon.
Very good. I wanted to mention with regard to the Commission on Aging that Jenna Kay, who provides staff support, meets periodically with the county manager and the chair regarding the commission's work from the prior year and what is upcoming. One of the things that was important from the prior year that they really explored was that from the pandemic, they had reinforced the importance of connection. And that connection would be all the way from social outlets for the aging population, as well as service availability, so that there was awareness of where that service was and how it could be accessed. But then they also discussed issues of importance for 2023. And this was very interesting to me, including integrated care, meaning that the care that would be given to the aging population in various places around the county would entail not just social services, not just mental services, but medical services as well, that there would be an integrated aspect of the care that was offered. And another important thing was their connection to emergency services. So we'll be hearing more from that when the Commission on Aging gives its 2023 report to council. Now, Councilor Marshall, did you all have a meeting last week on the Area Agency of Aging and Disabilities?
Yes, I attended that. And for starters, I just want to comment on Councillor Young's suggestion, and maybe not just a component of that. I'm very concerned about notice, particularly in the rural community, because 500 feet sometimes can only pick up a small number of people. So I'm doing a little research in what the requirements are, and we'll probably be talking to some people in the community, and maybe as a council we can talk about that at some time. But yes, I attended the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities, and I didn't realize it, but I've joined a Council of Governments because there's commissioners or councilors from 5 counties that make up that Council of Governments that govern the organization. They have 30 programs to serve this population and a budget of over 32 million. And I think one thing that was announced was Monty Hansen, who's kind of their long-term financial wizard, will be stepping down. So he's done a remarkable job in managing all of the finances because they've grown tremendously over the years. And to your point about integrating services, I know they have case management services that would provide that some of that integration. I think there may be some eligibility requirements, but that would be, I think as we can coordinate the Commission on Aging with the Area Agency on Aging and Disability, that could be a good thing. And one issue that's come up that might be of interest is there's been a delay in transitioning folks who are in short-term hospital stays into long-term care. And so that has meant people are staying longer and taking up hospital beds in the hospital. So there's just takes time to find that long-term care. And I don't know, it could be a shortage of providers as well, but I think that's something for us to be aware of.
Thank you. Then I also went to the Tribal Foundation Fund, Clark County, and we're midway now in the fourth quarter decisions on allocation of the $1 million plus for applications that have come in. So I'll report on that later. But one thing that will be coming up very soon, it goes back to the agreement between the tribes and the county as to the structure of that board. The agreement currently states that the county, it doesn't say the county council, it says the county will appoint 2 members and that the tribe will appoint 2 members, and it doesn't say that they're members of the tribe. And then it says that the 4 people there who have been appointed will select a 5th. And it doesn't give particular qualifications for that 5th member. So the group is wanting to, particularly from the tribe, to get more definition on this, and they will be wanting to approach the council in the near future when we have an opening on our agenda. Do we really want to have two counselors on representing that fund, representing the county? That's the way it is now. Currently, it's the chair plus one and an alternate. And their question to us will be, do we really feel the need to continue that? Do we want to continue that? They would probably like to see just one counselor and a member of the public. And that member of the public would be somebody with foundation experience. Right now, the fifth member of the board does have extensive foundation and grant making experience, and that is a real asset to the board in considering the grants and cases to be funded from the fund. So how this goes forward, I suggested that their members from the tribe come and talk with the council about their reasons for looking for a change, and then we could make a change if we felt it was, if we mutually felt that was important going forward. So that is maybe all of the boards that we've been attending. Or Councillor Young, did you have another WASAC Board of Directors?
That's later today. So I'll report on that next week.
Right. How about the one last week that was later that day?
We didn't have a board of directors one. There was the legislative steering committee, but I was not part of that. That is
right. That's Councillor Belcott.
Councillor Belcott. Yeah.
Right. And she'll have information on that when she is able to return next week. So is there any other councillor report?
I would like to ask a clarifying question on the tribe and the potential change in membership. Does the council want to invite them to a council time next week? Because we don't usually have outside partners attend, but of course, if council would like to have that discussion with them, I know that they have posed the question and are hoping to have an answer regarding the two board members. So does council want to include them next week?
I think that would be very appropriate.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other councillor reports? There's not a statement here for a county manager report. Do we have one?
No, I don't have any report today, thanks.
Okay, work session requests. There's the freight rail dependent uses.
Yes, and I believe council has discussed this previously, but it is from community planning to come to council for about an hour to discuss the history and the work that's already been done with regards to the freight rail dependent use legislation, and then get feedback and a path forward.
When would they envision coming?
They're suggesting March 1st. We'll have to confirm with calendars just to make sure we don't have something else already scheduled.
That sounds good. Any disagreement with that position? Okay, Lindsay here on policy issues.
I don't have any update today. As you know, Friday is my last day, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that it's been an honor and a privilege to serve you these last 5 years. And I sincerely hope that you'll stay in touch, and I know that I'll be around. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and my sincere gratitude and thanks.
Well, thank you for that. And you know that feeling is mutual, and we'll look for where your address is housed so we can be in touch. Thank you. We are ready to move into the executive session with potential litigation of 15 minutes. So that would put us at about 11:55. Is that correct? That we would be back in council time to adjourn. I take it there will anticipated be no after action. Is that correct, Leslie?
That is correct, Chair Bowerman.
Okay, so we will move to executive session. And I think every counselor on this group knows that we get out of this particular session and we go into a separate WebEx. It's a little hard to get used to that when you're a new counselor, but that's the process. And then we come back into this one for the adjournment at the end of executive session. So thanks to everyone who is here, and counselors, see you shortly.
Hello, the council is extending their executive session for 5 more minutes and will be returning at noon. Council is extending executive session another 5 minutes and will now be returning at 12:05. Thank you. Hello, council is extending executive session for 5 more minutes and will be returning at 12:10 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you all for returning, counselors, after executive session. We had been meeting in council time. We took up the matter of potential litigation, and that has now concluded, and there is no after action. So we are back into council time for the singular purpose of adjourning. This meeting is adjourned. Bye-bye.